All right, and that's from Amadine Uyi, News Central reporter there. Really, really good report. Now let's move into some other things. Zimbabwe yesterday joined the rest of the world in commemorating the World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. It's an annual event celebrated each year on the 15th of June, and it represents one day in the year when the whole world's voices opposition to the abuse and suffering inflicted to some of our older generation.
United Nations defines elder abuse as a single or repeated act or lack of appropriate action occurring within any relationship where there is an expectation of trust, which causes harm or distress to an older person. This phenomenon is also described as a global social issue which affects the health and human rights of millions of older persons around the world, and an issue which deserves the attention of the international community. Now, this is a very important conversation that we must have, and not just in Zimbabwe. I'm glad that Zimbabwe has joined the rest of the world to celebrate this significant day. We're joined by Joe Hansen to look into the conversation about elderly abuse. Joe, I do know that here in Africa we have so much work that needs to be done as regards awareness for elderly people's abuse. Now, elderly, of course, the United Nations has described what abuse means in this regard. But we see that there are several situations, Joe, really, that a lot of people, they have their parents, and it's almost like the moment you grow old, it's almost like it's a curse, it's a sin to grow old. And we need to do something about it.
Absolutely, it's a big problem. It's such a big problem, especially in Africa. I mean, take a look at today, Olive, take a look at today, Osage. Today happens to be that special day for the elders where they are actually being commemorated. But guess what? How many people are really talking about it as we speak here on air? A very little people, or a very small amount of persons. But let's look at it very carefully. For Zimbabwe, I mean, the theme for this year for them is Zimbabwe actually confronting elder abuse. That's the theme for this year. And that actually resonates well with the United Nations plan, which is to actually help the elders, the elderly ones, in the area of public health and, of course, in the aspects of human rights issues. Now, you will agree with me that this is one area that the elders are often sidelined. But the United Nations is trying to make sure that everybody seems to know about this. And the Ministry of Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare Minister, talking about Professor Paul Mavimba, he actually gave a speech yesterday. And on that speech, he actually highlighted some points. Some of the points is unwarranted treatment of senior citizens. Unwarranted treatment of senior citizens. Olive, Osage, this part of Africa, the West, most times we find out that we see older people on the streets. They're not getting the right treatment that they should get. He also highlighted the need for older people to get good access to three things. One, healthcare. Now, that is very necessary for old ones as well, because, I mean, like they say in this part of Africa, in western part of Africa, in Nigeria, where they say, Emadagba, you too will get older. We see the older ones, it's not something that most people want to really cherish, because it's like when you get older in some parts of Africa, you're being sidelined. But now in Zimbabwe, they're saying that healthcare should be very, very key for the older ones. There's also something else they're looking at, housing. Housing is also key. So when the minister was talking yesterday in Zimbabwe, he highlighted housing as well to be a major factor and a provision that should be looked into for the older ones. And not just housing, he also mentioned transportation and food. If you take a look around the streets of certain parts of Africa, Olive, Osage, you would agree with me, of course, with the viewers, that most times some of the people we see on the streets are the older ones. And most times you ask yourselves, where are their families? What's going on? They seem to be destitute. They're just loitering or just around the area. So you wonder. And that's why the minister talked tough on this. He said they need to focus on this. By the way, there is a provision for them in Zimbabwe. There's a law that has actually been stipulated. And this law is to make sure that it protects the older ones, provides them with these things that they do need: food, clothing, shelter, healthcare, and the likes.
We don't even have enough care homes, in many African countries for the elderly. But let me also just quickly share some things from the World Health Organization concerning World Elder Abuse Day. It says here, key factor: 1 in 6 people 60 years and older experienced some form of abuse in community settings during the last few years. It also says that rates of abuse of older people are high in institutions such as nursing homes and long-term care facilities, with 2 or 3 staff reporting that they have committed abuse in the past year. It also states that rates of elder abuse have increased during the COVID-19 pandemic. Abuse of older people can lead to serious physical and long-term psychological consequences. And the global populations of people aged 60 years and older will more than double from 900 million in 2015 to about 2 billion in 2050.
These are very interesting facts and statistics, Osaoge. Thank you very much for sharing. And it's important that we have conversations about old people, because we've seen their abuse. Even if we bring it back home to Nigeria, we've seen it happen in different ways. From them not, like Joe mentioned earlier, there's some old people you see and you wonder, where are their family members? Do they not have children? Why are they still hawking, at such old ages? Why are they still driving buses? Whilst we agree that some of them do these things intentionally to still feel young because they don't want to feel like they've lost a huge part of their youth, some are doing it because they need to survive. Absolutely. Now, abuse also appears in different forms from, there's some people who have been told that their parents are the cause of their doom. So we've seen situations where someone goes to a religious institution and they're being told that their mother or their father is a witch or is the one that has been, affecting them, and all of a sudden these people disconnect. Older people also need mental, emotional connection. I'm saying this because I'm very passionate about older people. There are people who are living la vida loca, enjoying their lives, but have no relationship whatsoever with their parents. And what they forget is that as people get older, it gets lonelier, because some of them are having their friends dying. They're not they're not able to move around as much as they used to. They're retired, so they need more emotional connection. If we were to do a poll and ask people when last they went to see their parents, you'll be shocked to see that many people haven't seen their parents all of this year. Whilst there are some that cannot help it, there are some that blatantly will not just see them or speak with them over the phone. Absolutely. And there's also abuse on the governmental level. What we see is that if you go to certain banks, you will see them queuing for ages to collect their pension and their gratuity. This should not be so. Older people who have worked, given a part of their youth towards working, providing for their families, providing for their government, should not be cheated out of the retirement that they deserve and the benefits that come with having retired. So it's a really deep conversation that I'm glad that the United Nations is talking about it. I'm glad that Zimbabwe is talking about it. We are not talking about it here in Nigeria.
Not really.
I'm hoping that other parts of Africa will have these conversations. And, like Osaoge mentioned earlier, we're not open to the idea of old people's home. I remember speaking with someone, and the person said, God forbid that I will be sent to an old people's home. I'd rather die than go to an old people's home. We've heard people talk about that. And that's also because of the sort of abuse that we've seen in certain old people's homes because of the medical professional. They don't feel emotionally attached to you, so they don't feel the need.
Olive, let me also tell you this. Let me come in here and also let you know that 2 things. In this part of Nigeria, particularly in Nigeria from Lagos as a whole, I can tell you a few months ago, we've driven around looking for old people's home. You cannot find one.
Yep.
Where you can get one is in Ibadan. Yes.
That's really sad.
And then you have one that was also recommended to the family that you would find in Ikorodu Axis. And when you try to put a call through so you could have time, set up a time to go and check it out, it's a problem. The numbers are not going through. So these are some of the abuses that these elderly ones have to go through. They're faced with. Talk less of being taken care of, being ensuring that they are well fed and the likes. So the monies that they call in terms of paying to take care of them is so much. We were told to pay 300,000 naira per month.
Wow.
Well,
now, take a look at that calculation. 300,000 times 12.
How many people can afford that?
If you do your calculation, I mean, that's about 36,000 or 300. That's 3.6 million.
3.6 million.
That's a lot. So that's why places in Zimbabwe, I mean, kudos to the minister. They are actually coming out to ensure they talked about this last year, June 15, 2021, and this year again the speech was equally held. And the minister Paul Mavimba is indeed ensuring that people actually follow what has been stipulated. There is an Older Person Act that was indeed stipulated into law. That act is to stand as a voice for the older people. However, I must mention here that some of the older persons in Zimbabwe are already saying that they're not really feeling the effects of this act, where they are supposed to get benefits, but they are not really getting them. On this part of Nigeria, let's just be honest with ourselves. All of you mentioned it already. You see long queues. Some are even dying on the spot just to get their pension.
And they don't get it eventually. And you know the sad, scary part about this is another 30 years, Joe, you, myself, Osaoge, will fall under the category of the older persons.
Just to quickly, mention, that I think we also need to get away from the stigma of old age. It's a beautiful thing.
Exactly.
A lot of people, there's some stigma. There's also some traditional
Ageism.
and cultural, things that make people shy away from going to old people's homes and care homes for the elderly.
I love old people.
And that's why they disturb you to give them grandchildren instead, to take care of them at home.
Yes.
Instead of going to an
I mean, it's that fear of old age that's making people desperately hold on to their youth, undergoing all sorts of procedures to want to still look young.
Oh, yeah.
It is okay to age, right? Aging is a beautiful thing. It's only someone that's alive that will get old. We hope that we will get old, and it concerns me what would happen in our generation, because this generation of young people, they're very expressive, very vocal, and they're a little bit radical. So I wonder if we're not having as much participation, when it comes to conversation about older persons now. When we become the older persons, what will happen? I'm very passionate about older people, and I hope that more people, as we're having this conversation, more people can lean in towards that. But let's move over. Thank you very much, Joe.